Hi guys, in this video I'm going to show you how friend request system works. So we are going to be looking at the logic behind friend request system and emulating Facebook as a case. So we'll look at the logic on how we can build a friend request system if you want to build your own, how you can make one user of your system send requests to another user, and the second user accept this request, and these two users can be identified as friends in your system. So we're going to be looking at how Facebook works. So this logic will be able to help you if you want to build a friend request system on your website, or you want to integrate friend request system on your mobile app. So how does the system actually work? What are the logics, or what is the logic behind friend request system? So now, as we're looking at Facebook as a case, a user has to log into Facebook to make friends with others. Yes, before a user can send friend requests to other users on Facebook, the said user must be logged in. So once a user logs in, you can now start sending friend requests to other users, and you can as well make friends to other users and perform other activities on Facebook. So now there's something that happened. Remember, in some of the videos, in some of our previous videos, I talked about how registration and login system, how it works. So now, remember I said something about, we talked about how the database looks once a user is registered on a system. We have a database table, the users table, where we store our users' information. Now, each user on Facebook has a unique ID. So we are taking, for instance, that these are the users on Facebook database. For instance, we have unique ID that uniquely identify each of these users. We have user A to user F, and each of these users have their own name, their email. Also, we are able to take record of the date of their registration. We treat all these things in the video when I talk about registration and login system, how they work, the logic behind it. So now, on Facebook, there's a database that stores information of each user. So if you are trying to build this kind of similar system, you know that each of your users has to register and log in, and you have a database where you store their information. And your database table should have an ID that will uniquely identify each user. So once you're able to register users on your database, and now you want them to make friends with each other, now let's look at the logic of how to achieve this. But take note that each of these users, let's assume the selected user here is user A, and user A wants to send request to user B. We're going to be using their user ID to be able to keep record that user A is sending request to user B, or that user A is sending requests to user C. So how does this work? When you visit Facebook, you log into Facebook, Facebook suggests friends, suggest a friend for the user, or user can search for a friend to ask. So what I mean here is that once you log into Facebook, whether that's a Facebook suggest friends and say people you may know, or that you search for a particular friend you want to make friends with on Facebook by searching for the friend by their name or by their city or those kind of things, and once you search the people you want to make friends with, Facebook provides you with a button to add them as friend. Now see what happens. Once a user hits a button, add friend. Now look at this, look at the picture we have here. You realize here we'll see people we may know. We'll have an add button, and the second column on the second row we'll have Wamba Ebuka, we'll have add friend. Now let's assume that a user A is logged in, and these users are suggested as people he or she may know. So if user A wants to add a Kene Wamba as friend, now inside this row where we have a Kene Wamba add button, there is a hidden ID that Facebook stores there. If you are conversant with the HTML input, you realize that they will have one input to call an hidden input. These inputs are used to store some information that the website used to control their web page and to perform some activities. So maybe let me say we are assuming that Facebook will use a hidden input to store a Kene Wamba's user ID, so that once user A, for instance, is logged in and hit this button, Facebook picks the ID of a Kene Wamba, then picks the ID of that user A who is the active user, then send that to their server. Now, what are they trying to do? They will send it to server and say, okay, user A is requesting to be a friend with a Kene Wamba. Maybe the ID of a Kene Wamba is user C. So Facebook will send user A ID and send user C ID, requesting them to be friends. Now, see what happens now. When user sends a friend request to another user from search, okay, that's not it. So the database structure on server, once user A sends a request to user C. Now, remember I said that once user A, his add friend requests are sent to server. So what Facebook does there is that once user A hits a button add friend for user C and this request is sent to server, Facebook runs a check and check this friends database to check if there is a place where user A and user C are friends. If there is no column containing user A and user C, whether user A as the sender and user C as the receiver, or user C as the sender and user A as receiver, if there is no row containing their information, which means they are not friends and there's no request sent here, now Facebook will store them on a particular table, indicating that user A is sending requests to user C. Now, why user A will be stored as a sender is because user A is the person requesting to be friends with user C. Now, if it is in the other way around, whereby if user C is the one requesting to be friends with user A, then user C user ID will be stored on that sender column, while user A will be on the receiver's column. So now, why we do it like this, to be able to identify who is receiving and who is sending. So now, if user A sends to make friends with user C, user A is now the sender, user C is the receiver. So once Facebook adds this information to the friends table, Facebook will send a request, will send a notification, will have a table to store notification as well. Now Facebook will add information to the notification table saying that user A is requesting to be friends with user C. Now, there is another column in this table which name is friendship status. Now remember, when you send a friend request to another user on Facebook, you are not yet friend until that user accepts to be friends with you. So why we have this column is, if you are building your own website, for instance, you're building your own database, structuring your own database, for instance, when a user sends a request to a user, you need a column to specify their friendship status, whether they are friend yet, they are not friend yet, they are friend and the other friend has blocked the other friend. You have a column to store this information. So 0 here means that user A has sent request to user C, but they are not yet friends now. So 1 means that they are friends already, which means if user C on the other side accepts to be friends with user A, the status is updated from 0 to 1. So now, remember, once user A sends request to user C, now user C will receive friend request notification. Now, user A on the database is Chijioke Francis. Now, if you look at our database, you find out that user A here is Chijioke Francis. Then user C here is Ekene Nwamba. So the user ID the user ID for Chijioke Francis in database is user A, and the user ID for Ekene Nwamba is user C. So that is why Chijioke Francis now is sending requests to Ekene Nwamba. Chijioke Francis as user A and Nwamba Ekene as user C. So now look at this friend request. Now user C, which is Nwamba Ekene, is receiving friend request notification from user A, and user A name, full name, is being displayed on this notification. So now there is a button to confirm or to decline being user with user A. Now user C is presented with this information: the name of the person and the profile picture of the person sending request, which is user A, sending to requesting to be friends with him or her. Now it is left for user C to accept or decline the request. So what is the logic behind declining or accepting to be friends with user A? So now we have talked about the logic on how user A requests to be friends with user C. So let's talk about how user C can as well decline being friends with user A. So now, once user C has this notification, user A is requesting to be a friend. If user C wants to accept to be friends with user A, user C has to hit this button. Now remember, we say before, an ID is hidden for user A, that the user ID of this Chijioke Francis is hidden somewhere. So once user C clicks or hits the button confirm, that ID that identifies Chijioke Francis will be picked. Then the user ID for user C as the active user will also be collected and now sent to Facebook server. Right? Remember, we are taking Facebook for an instance now. Now Facebook will now go and take user A and user C ID which have been sent and say confirm that user C has accepted to be friends with user A. Simply what Facebook will do is to say, okay, is there anywhere in the database, in the friend database, where user A is sending requests to user C? Now Facebook will check the friend database. Okay, there is a place where user A is sending requests to user C, and remember, when that request was sent, the friendship status is 0. So once this information exists, where user A is sending requests to user C and user C is now requesting to confirm to be friends with user A, Facebook will update that particular column from 0 to 1, which means user C has accepted to be friends with user A. So this is just the logic. We use database to control these activities, to store each state of this system. When a user sends a request to be a friend with another user, we add this request to database, indicating with a column that they are not yet friends with 0. When the other friend accepts to be friends with the other friend, we update that same friendship column to 1 to indicate that the other friend has accepted to be friends with the sender. Now, that's it for how this system works. Now, once user C accepts to be friends with user A, now user A can now see user C as friend in his or her friend list. Remember that our user C is Ekene Nwamba, and now Ekene Nwamba have accepted to be friends with user A, which is Chijioke Francis. Now this user A can now see Ekene Nwamba as friends in his friend list. Now, but what if user C declines to be friend with user A? What happens? Remember, I will say declining, not blocking user A, but just rejecting to be friends. Now, if they reject to be friends, simply you can actually, if you are building this as your own system, you can actually just go to the database. If user C sends say I don't want to be friend with user A, you just pick the user A ID and user C ID, come to database, check if they exist. If they exist, just delete the row. The reason why you are just deleting the row but you're not updating the status to maybe 2 or any other thing is that you want to allow user A to be able to resend friend requests some other time. You just delete the row. But if in a scenario whereby you want, once user C declines to be a friend with user A cannot send friend requests again. Maybe you can choose to update your friendship status to something like 2, and you know that whenever there is a 2 as a friendship status between 2 users, you know that this user is blocking this user. Simple. So this is just the simple logic on how this system works. We use our database to track the states. When a user sends a request, we'll store it in the database. We'll send notification to the other user indicating that a request has been made. Then the other user accepts the request to update our database indicating they are now friends, or we delete the row when the other friend declines to be friend with the sender. Now remember, when one is sending requests, you have to identify that particular user as a sender and the other user as a receiver, having the sender column, the receiver column, the friendship status indicating the state or their friendship status at each particular point in time on your system. So that's simply how this system works, and thanks for watching. If you have not subscribed to my channel, please do me a favor and hit the subscription button, and if this video is helpful, like and leave us a comment. Thanks once again.